Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfic. This will be the continuation of When Realities Collide. This will be Part 5, Chapter 5. Thursday. Alternate Reality. You want me to participate in your heroics class? The teenager frowns hard at the navy-colored training uniform Shota had set on the table, the small pile neatly folded and sized appropriately for Midoriya's small but muscly form. I thought you said that you didn't trust 1A not to kill me. Shota leans back in his chair, glancing over at Tazashi, who's watching in interest, sipping at his miso soup. The teenager across from Shota is staring at the uniform like it'll jump up at him, chopsticks frozen at his mouth where he'd paused as he'd gone to take a bite of rice. I never said I thought they'd kill you. Shota wrinkles his nose, ignoring the skeptical look in the teenager's eyes. Nezu and I just determined that it would be safer for you not to participate until I could be sure my students could behave. But now you want me to. Midoriya blinks slowly, glancing at Tazashi, who looks just as confused. When the blonde catches the teen's eyes, he offers a clueless shrug. I only met them yesterday. I think they're still wary. I think they'll behave now. Shota offers easily, already knowing the curiosity outweighs the hesitance with the majority of 1A. Just as I said, I won't force anyone to do anything. If you don't trust them, we'll scrap the whole idea. Just like I won't make any of my students fight you if you do want to participate. I'm sure a couple of students would want to fight you, and those who don't will just have regular individual training like usual. I do. Midoriya nods slowly, lowering the bite of rice back into his bowl. I do want to participate in class, and I think I trust most of your 1A class. I just don't... What's changed? Why now? I'm curious about your quirk, Shota tells him honestly. And he is. He'd seen just a wisp of what he assumes is a powerful quirk. It really had been something, seeing the teenager bounce speedily between the buildings, an air of strength and almost weightlessness keeping him up. The sparks of green almost like electricity, trailing in his wake. He's agile and swift, but that doesn't explain the scars. The arm and wrist scarring, and the need for surgery on his arms after the festival. There was definitely more to the quirk than meets the eye, and as a man who scopes out potential, he's curious. He wants to see and know what's going on, how the teenager had gotten so beat up with what appeared to be a speed quirk at first glance. He wants to understand this quirk, and maybe even get a glimpse at what other reality Aizawa has to deal with. You moved fast, back when you first found me, scaling the buildings to get to me. That's not something I've seen before, not like that. Shota says easily, cocking his head as the teenager's eyebrows bunch together. But I don't believe what I saw was a simple speed enhancement quirk. I think you have a very powerful emitter quirk that can and has done substantial damage to your body. I just want to see what you're capable of. And there's no better place than here, fighting the students, where I can keep a close eye and call it off if I think it's getting out of hand. That makes sense. Midoriya hums quietly, still looking unsure. I do want to do some sparring if it's an option, but are you sure your 1A students will be all right with that? I've gotten a lot better since the start of the year, and I don't know your 1A's current skill level. Not that I'm saying I'm better at all. Just, I don't want to hurt anyone. I only know my classmates' quirk control and growth. What do you mean by that, kiddo? Izashi asks, setting his chopsticks down. Oh, the boy pauses before answering, leaning back in his chair with a thoughtfully sort of look. His hand lifts to his face, thumb pressing under his chin as his finger curls faintly over his lips. Well, assuming both classes started at the same level, quirk and education-wise, I just know how powerful my peers are now. We've all been learning a lot through the year, and there's been a lot of fights that we've all grown and learned from. Kachan and Todoroki for sure, but I don't know how they differ, not really. Todoroki-kun here still doesn't use his fire, while my Todoroki has been making great progress with his. Then there's Kachan. I know that I'm a motivator for him in my reality, even if it's just his drive to be better than me and surpass me in class and heroics. It's not the healthiest of relationships, but it does get the job done. I know we both learn from it, and he is my biggest rival in class. I don't know if there's someone in your class that would act as the same push towards your Kachan. Well, Todoroki maybe, but if he's not reaching his full potential, neither will Kachan. Then there's my other classmates like Ida. I know about Hosu, the fight he was a part of. I think he learned from that, but I don't know what exactly. It was different for my Ida because Todoroki and I were both there too. Both outcomes were different, so I don't know what your Ida would have learned, and your Ida was badly injured, while mine wasn't seriously hurt. There's a difference that could have impacted him. Has the injury affected him much? He mentioned loss of muscle mass and momentum when we talked, but I don't know how that would really influence his growth. The boy is no longer talking to them, and his words have softened to mumbles that Shota has to strain to hear. The teen is making good points Shota had thought about briefly, but hadn't really given too much more thought. It's hard to really think about the differences considering he doesn't know the students in Midoriya's 1A class. He knows they exist, from the same place Midoriya exists from, but, truthfully, they're more a concept than they are actual people to Shota. He'll probably never meet these students, and when Midoriya is gone, assuming he actually does return home, Shota really hopes he does, he probably won't ever see him again either. Plus, he hasn't taught them, and he hasn't seen them in action. He doesn't know for certain, and can't without being able to see and compare, and the possibility of that is highly unlikely. Though, from what he's seen of Midoriya and his skill of observation and analysis, he can't just discredit him. At this point, he trusts Midoriya enough to take what he's telling him into consideration. He's only known the kid for a couple of days at this point, but there's just something trustworthy about the boy, and he has the ability to give honest critiques based on what he's seen from both sides. Midoriya is willing to help 1A, that's evident from how he'd spoken with Todoroki despite his own hesitance, and honestly, they do sound like they possibly could have grown more in the other reality than they have here. Judging just from what he'd managed to pick up from what Midoriya is saying, at least. Todoroki using both his ice and fire is staggering, considering his absolute refusal and their reality when his fire side is even mentioned. How the boy shuts down emotionally, face going blank. Even Hound Dog hadn't been able to make heads or tails of that situation past the obvious fact it has to do with Endeavor. Shota doesn't know what happens behind closed doors or where the suspicious burn scar on Todoroki's face truly came from, but there's a sick feeling in his chest that has always made him wary of the current #1 hero. He's tried asking, just once, but Todoroki just goes cautiously blank. They can't do much if nothing's been reported, not to mention how difficult it would be to flag the #1 hero of Japan as an abuser even if the Todoroki siblings did report anything. Still, they can't even open an investigation unless there's reason to suspect something amiss, and Todoroki has never stated otherwise. And Bakugo has always been strong, but Shota has had the suspicion he wasn't quite pushing himself to his own limits. Bakugo had had a good handle on his quirk since that first day, but he hadn't really improved. It makes sense that his quirk growth has been stunted if there's nothing that'll light a fire under his ass and make him want to do better. He's not sure how he feels about Midoriya being the fire lit under his childhood bully's ass, being the target for Bakugo's need to be superior and probably getting the backlash that comes with close contact to an emotionally constipated school bully who had apparently never been reprimanded in his life. Hadn't Midoriya said something about his Aizawa saving him from Bakugo on the first day of school? Red flags that he's sure the alternate Aizawa hadn't considered. He wants to believe that he would have been different, would have noticed instantly. But the more he thinks about it, the more he doubts it. Looking at the facts, they'd come from the same middle school, and Kachan is a cutesy nickname. It sounds friendly. Shota tries not to grimace, mentally waving away the thought. This all just begs the question of why the exact same students are at fundamentally different skill levels, assuming they've gone through similar fights regarding the League of Villains, and that the classes are essentially the same. So, is it the other Aizawa's doing, or is it Midoriya's influence on everyone that spurs things into action? He shares a quick glance with Hizashi before looking back at where the teenager's now mumbling under his breath, gaze dropping to his bowl of rice but unseeing. He's no longer loud enough for Shota to understand at all, even when he leans closer. Is this common for him? It's interesting, sure, but it's also a bit worrying. There's an additional part to this suggested heroics training course that Shota doesn't want to mention quite yet. He wants to know if there are notable differences between his 1A and the alternate reality 1A. He wants Midoriya to observe his students' quirks and fighting styles just as much as he wants to do the same to Midoriya's own. If Midoriya's been in his own class 1A with most of Shota's students for this long, he definitely would have been watching his peers and friends get stronger, probably encouraging them too, if his kind nature is anything to go off. It would be illogical to know what he does with the teen and not think he'd been analyzing them all this time. Midoriya obviously has a fascination with quirks, and he's definitely been watching, whether subconsciously or intentionally. Besides, where better to study new quirks than to delve into those of your friends and classmates? He'll be able to determine how the students are different from reality to reality, and maybe even help Shota figure out how to target his students' weaknesses and help them get stronger here too. If they are stronger in Midoriya's reality, there's a possibility that his kids can reach that level as well. He just needs to know and be able to get them there. Shota startles as a heel kicks back into his shin. He looks up towards Hisashi at the side, but is distracted by his husband calling the teenager's name. Midoriya startles out of his own thoughtfulness, taking a second to orient himself before smiling sheepishly and apologizing. Not a problem. Shota clears his throat, leaning back in his chair. So, thoughts? I want to do it. The boy squares his shoulders in determination. I'll admit, I'm curious to see if they're different. I have my own theories just from what I know of my friends back home. I don't know what's changed, how they've changed, but I know that no matter the reality I'm in, they're all still themselves, heroes in training, trying to be the best they can. Plus, no one tried to kill me yesterday, right? Bakugo did try to kill you. Shota deadpans. That wasn't him trying to kill me. Midoriya gives a sheepish smile, rubbing at the back of his neck. Besides, that's different. I knew he was going to be like that, or I suspected it. He's always been rough like that, even when we were little. Plus, now I know this Kachan didn't mean it. He was scared. Your standards are worryingly low, little listener, Hisashi mutters, shaking his head. He shares a glance with Shota, face puckering up. It's okay, Midoriya chimes brightly, smiling in Hisashi's direction. I'm used to Kachan's brashness. He really has always been the same, and though we get along now, he used to be much worse. Your Bakugo really has grown up a lot. Hisashi opens his mouth to respond. Seems to reconsider before shutting his mouth with a click of his teeth, looking desperately to Shota. Shota sees worry in his husband's gaze, and it's even more concerning considering Hisashi doesn't even know the finer details that Shota had been privy to yesterday. Shota squints at the boy. Care to elaborate on that? Midoriya freezes up, shoulders going tense. No, thank you, Sensei. I'm okay. All right. Hisashi clears his throat, letting a tiny smile curl onto his lips. You just let us know if anything gets out of hand while you're here, you dig? You should feel safe here. I do. Midoriya returns the smile. I always feel safe with Aizawa-sensei around. Even when he didn't know me, or think I belonged in his class, he still kept me safe. Then at the USJ, too, he put his own life on the line for us. And you were the first one to comfort me when I got here, and at the time you still thought I was a villain. You're the nicest teacher I've ever had. And you already know you're one of my favorites. I don't know if that's nice to hear, Shota winces, eyeing the child, or if it's utterly terrifying that I'm the nicest teacher you've had. Your standards really are low. Sensei, the boy squeaks out as Hisashi snorts a laugh into his coffee. Both, Hisashi answers, smiling cheekily. He blatantly ignores the squeak and sputtering coming from the child across from them. Both is a reasonably acceptable answer, adorable and terrifying. The teenager slumps back in his seat, lip jutting out a pout. He looks seconds away from apologizing, which Shota does not want. He shifts just enough in his seat to draw in Midoriya and Hisashi's attention. We should all get a move on, Shota tells the table, standing up before arching his back in a stretch. He grabs his bowls, eyeing the two still seated. Classes will be starting soon. And weren't you talking about meeting a few of the second years for some extra help this morning, Zashi? Ah, shit! You're right! The screech Hisashi lets out borders on close to quirk-enhanced, the curse word coming out in English. Shota hides a laugh in his capture weapon as Hisashi flies out of his seat, rushing into their bedroom to gather the assignments he'd spent the night marking. Midoriya winces at the loudness, shoulders shrugging up to his ears in an attempt to block the noise. But Shota's already resigned to his fate of premature hearing loss. Hisashi storms back into the kitchen like a tornado, pressing a quick and sloppy kiss to Shota's cheek with a hurried, "Love you, babe. Have a good day. See you, kiddo." As he rushes out the door, Shota narrows his eyes at the door his husband had just rushed out of, as he lifts a fist to wipe away the kiss with the back of his hand. He lolls his head in Midoriya's direction, eyes narrowing dangerously when he sees the brat snickering behind his glass of juice. Not a word from you, Shota warns, hand looping into his capture weapon threateningly. Midoriya doesn't look threatened in the least. Not a word about what, Sensei? Midoriya asks sweetly, setting the glass down. It would be almost convincing if it weren't for the shit-eating grin. My lips are sealed. Good, the man manages out, looking away from the kid sharply. He just knows his cheeks had lit up in a light flush. There's just something about Hisashi being domestic and affectionate around his sort of student that feels weird. He doesn't even think Hisashi had even realized it in his frenzied state. Thank whatever deity exists that it was Midoriya who'd seen and not any of the other gremlins to see it. It was very cute, Sensei. Scratch that. Midoriya is also a gremlin. Those are words, Midoriya. Shota huffs, cheeks darkening. No more words. The child lets out a quiet laugh that could almost be considered a giggle, hiding his mouth behind his hand. Shota lets the embarrassment pass, knowing the boy won't say anything to anyone else. He's a cheeky little thing, but he's not a bad kid. I'm finished now. Not another word. The boy huffs lightly, tone humorous. Promise. Uh-huh. Shota gives one last threatening glance before letting his shoulders slump. Are you ready to head out? Classes will be starting soon. I'm sure most of my students have already left, so we should go before we're late. You're not enrolled, but I won't hear the end of it if I'm late. And you have a perfect record for being on time. The teen gives a nod. How did... Shota cuts himself off, at Midoriya's sheepish look. It was Hisashi, wasn't it? He may have mentioned it. Midoriya laughs as he finally stands, grabbing the training uniform. My present, Mike, not yours. I was a little surprised since you're always so tired. Why do you think I'm always so tired? Shota cocks an eyebrow. Midoriya pauses at that, blinking thoughtfully. I've never thought about that. Punctuality is logical, Shota offers dryly. And I can't expect you lot to be on time if I'm not. I've noticed that you teenagers are barely any better than elementary kids when it comes to learning by example, monkey see, monkey do. Doesn't matter how old you are, school children always tend to follow what's being said as an example. Midoriya quirks his head to the side thoughtfully. Is that why you said all that on the first day? What did I say on the first day? You said, oh right, you're not my sensei, so... Shota stares the kid down, urging him to continue with one single, arched eyebrow. Well, you arrived exactly on time, but we were, a little distracted, meeting each other, for, 8 whole seconds. You counted and told us. Sounds about right. Shota hums in reply, thinking about his own first day with this year's 1A students. What did I say? You said, that's not going to work. Time is precious. And then you said, rational students would understand that. Midoriya pauses, watching Shota silently, like he's gauging his reaction to the words. You never really explained it, but you were scary enough at that first meeting that we made a conscious effort to be ready exactly on time. And that's all true. Shota nods, silently pleased with alternate Aizawa. 8 seconds was long enough for a warning, but not long enough for the lecture Shota's own students got when they finally noticed him 36 seconds late, due to Bakugo and Ida arguing. Time is precious, especially as a hero. Every second counts, and that's one of the first lessons I teach my students. Tardiness in class, or even as a hero, shows that you don't care enough to show up on time, that what you're doing isn't important enough. What kind of message does that send? Who wants a pro who doesn't care enough to arrive on time? Midoriya gives a thoughtful hum, seeming to be taking his words into consideration. And that's why you're always right on time. It is. Shota bows his head in a nod. Teaching up-and-coming heroes is important, and not taking that seriously, not giving your students respect in return when I ask for respect from you is illogical. I only have 3 years to whip my students into shape, and every second of those 3 years is important. Soon, you'll be full-fledged heroes, and I want you all to be the best heroes you can be. It's important to me as your teacher, and I want you students to know that. Even if I don't outright tell you, I set examples I want you to pick up on, even if it's something as simple as respecting our time as a class. My sensei's never mentioned this, Midoriya offers mindfully. I've never really thought it was this important, you know? Everyone just thought sensei was just being a hard-ass. No offense, especially since my sensei hasn't even really mentioned punctuality since the first day. We talk about being on time more than sensei does. And I've never told my students, Shota shrugs. But you've all still picked up on it, haven't you? What your Aizawa said at the start of the year was just words, Midoriya. It was a lecture, sure, but it got through to you. It was brought to your attention once, and as I continued to arrive on time and respect you, you all followed my lead. It's a mutual respect that I don't think most teachers tend to even notice. Midoriya doesn't respond, so Shota continues easily. Besides, I'm sure 1A's good punctuality will follow you all through your careers, because that subconscious thought is always there. Impressions are everything in this line of work, and how and when you arrive will always be the first impression you offer. Huh. Midoriya finally breathes out, eyebrows drawn together as he thinks. That's a really good lesson. I didn't even realize we've all been subconsciously cautious about our timing. I thought we just didn't want to disappoint you again. That's probably part of it too, Shota tells him. That's the mutual respect we've built. I hold you students to high standards because I know you're capable of meeting them. The fact that you don't want to disappoint your Aizawa just means you respect him and his authority." "I do," Midoriya confirmed shyly. "I respect both of you. I don't know if that counts, though, because you are technically the same person." "I'm glad, kid," Shota huffs. "And try not to get into the little technicalities of this reality swap thing. It'll just give you a migraine. Focus on what you know." Right," the teen gives a fierce nod. "I'll try not to." "All right, then." Shota bites back a smile, glancing at the digital clock on the microwave. "Now we really should get going. Put your training uniform in the backpack the teacher's got you, and let's get a move on."
Wait, Sensei."
Shota pauses, turning to look back at the teen who hasn't really moved from the table yet, despite the fact he's standing. Midoriya suddenly looks almost nervous. Shota refrains from frowning at the sudden expression. He cocks an eyebrow in silent question, watching as the teen draws in a shaky breath before looking up with determination squared shoulders. Can I make a request for training, if we're really doing it?" Shota blinks, tucking his hands into his pocket. The automatic response that sits on the tip of his tongue is a no. He's not one for allowing requests when it comes to heroics in class. That's not something that'll happen in the hero world, especially new and upcoming heroes. Heroics is more or less jumping through hoops, unless you manage to rank high on the charts or establish your own agency where you make the rules. It's another lesson he tries to teach early on. Things won't always go your way, and as shitty as it is, the newer heroes' opinions are hardly ever taken into consideration. He's sure it's like that in most working environments. Still, the words die on his tongue when he glances back at where Midoriya sheepishly stood at the table, clutching the training uniform to his chest, with his head cocked in question. As much as he wants to hold strong and tell the kid he doesn't get any special treatment, he's sure his own Aizawa doesn't play favorites either. He instead finds his shoulders slumping, as a sigh leaves his lungs, considering the circumstances of Midoriya's presence here. He's avidly trying to make the teen as comfortable here as he can. "What sort of request?" He can at least hear the boy out. Morning classes fly by fast. Homeroom finds Izuku sitting in the 20th desk at the back of the room. He's almost out of sight, out of mind, or he would be if the 1A students weren't glancing back at him. He feels more under observation now than he did yesterday, meeting the students. Yesterday, Aizawa-sensei had been right by his side, shutting things down before anything really happened. Now, he's going over announcements up front while glancing over every so often. He's trying to decipher the looks being thrown back at him, gauging who he should be wary of, who's more curious than nervous, and who's already sort of accepted his presence. He wants to trust them, but he knows what they can do. He knows their quirks, and he's seen them fighting villains, and the fact of the matter is that he technically is a villain here. Thankfully, Aizawa-sensei keeps them distracted throughout the homeroom period, and it passes quickly. The next 3 periods go by just as fast. Prison Mike drops off a small package of paperwork to Aizawa-sensei, then the underground hero is walking to the teacher's desk, where Izuku is settled and handing him just a portion of the paperwork. It's math work, and Izuku probably shouldn't be as relieved as he is to be working on math work during what's supposed to be his math class period. He gets English and history work handed to him at the start of each new period. He doesn't pay much mind to the second or third years, and tries hard not to be distracted by the feeling of eyes on him. He wonders what they know by now, if anyone's connected him to Deku. There's no hostility, though, not even when Aizawa-sensei isn't looking. He counts it as a win. By the time lunch rolls around, Izuku has finished all the classwork he's been given, and Aizawa-sensei collects it, promising to mark it himself. Yamada-sensei makes his second appearance at the start of lunch, arriving into the 1A classroom with 2 bento boxes. He's relieved to see food, and hadn't even realized he was subconsciously making himself sick with anxiety thinking about going to the cafeteria. The thought of being alone in the school is weirdly terrifying, especially since he's so used to wandering alone in his own reality. Fresh from lunch rush, Yamada-sensei cheers happily, holding out both as offerings. Izuku's mouth waters at the sight. He glances towards Aizawa-sensei, who's lazily regarding Present Mike, before looking over at the voice hero. Izuku perks up in his seat when Present Mike steps close enough to where he was taking advantage of the empty classroom to relax a bit, passing him the second bento. He'd taken up residence at Hagakure's abandoned desk, so Aizawa-sensei could sit at his own desk over the lunch period, while also making sure he's close enough to the teacher that he doesn't feel completely on edge. "Hope you like it, little listener," the blonde-haired man says with a wide grin, giving the teacher and student both a quick wave before disappearing just as he'd come in. Izuku is thrilled to see tonkatsu in the bento containers. He's always loved lunch rushes, tonkatsu, closest he's ever found to his mom's homemade, the only competition he's ever found. They eat in comfortable silence. Aizawa-sensei looks busy with some marking, taking bites between sips of coffee and scratching of his pen on papers, while Izuku just focuses on his meal before him instead of what'll be happening after lunch. He's second-guessing, agreeing to participate in heroics. He knows Aizawa-sensei wouldn't mind if he did choose to not participate. He'd made it clear that the cards are all in Izuku's hands at this point. But he really does want to try. He is curious, and he knows he's just psyching himself out. He wants some normalcy, or the closest he can get, which brings him to standing at Aizawa-sensei's side, looking down the line of 1A. He can't help but wilt away from the prying eyes of the alternate reality classmates, nerves ticking upwards as he tries not to squirm and hide behind Aizawa-sensei. They're in Gym Gamma, just after lunch period. The afternoon is scheduled heroics training, and Izuku's probably even more nervous than he'd been on the first day of school. It's weird, being on this side of training. Standing by the teacher instead of standing with his peers, it almost makes him feel like he's in trouble. But then again, he feels safe at Aizawa-sensei's side. He likes being able to scan 1A's faces, too. It eases his nerves, being able to pick apart their expressions as everything's explained. I'm giving you the chance to choose what you'd like to do during class today. Aizawa-sensei draws, glancing down the line. Midoriya will be participating in class today. Whispers from the class have Izuku wincing subtly, wringing his hands together. That said, the man continues, instantly quieting the students with nothing more than his tone. I was serious when I said I wouldn't be forcing anyone to interact with Midoriya. If you're not comfortable, or you just don't want to participate so soon, that's fine. Izuku feels the man slouch at his side, eyeing the students thoughtfully. There are 2 options you can pick from today. The first is dual battles, just like you participated in during the sports festival, one-on-one battles versus Midoriya. It will be a challenge, I'm sure. Keep in mind that Midoriya is a student in this school where he's from, so he knows your quirks. That's an advantage that you won't have. To Izuku's genuine surprise, a lot of the students look interested in that option. Kirishima and Kaminari are whispering excitedly to each other, and Kachan, who Izuku had requested to be able to participate in the heroics lesson this one time only, despite the house arrest, has his eyes narrowed on Izuku. Shinso and Ida both look intrigued at the idea of battling him, but there's still the flicker of uncertainty. Todoroki is the one who looks the most excited, though, a dull but excited determination alit in his gaze that has Izuku perking up. Dual-colored eyes catch Izuku's own green eyes, and something about the short exchange perks Izuku up. He's excited now. Now that he hasn't been immediately blacklisted, it's starting to sound fun. I see some of you are interested in that. Aizawa-sensei muses boredly. Good. It'll be good practice for anyone interested. Thus far, you've been majoritarily fighting quirks you know. You're starting to understand your classmates' fight styles, which is good, but Midoriya is an unknown, which you'll face often as a pro. Just as a reminder, to all interested in taking him on in a fight, I expect things to be kept friendly. He's not an enemy, and you will be penalized if you do not heed this warning. There is a chorus chirp of, "Yes, Sensei," from the students. It's a bit of a weight off his shoulders, but he's still a little nervous. Sensei! Izuku looks towards Kirishima, whose hand is raised and waving overhead. He doesn't speak again until Aizawa-sensei actually glances over. What's Midoriya's quirk? At this, Aizawa-sensei, and everyone else, glances towards Izuku for an explanation. His heart seizes in his chest at being the center of attention. He clears his throat awkwardly, trying not to wince at his own awkwardness. It's called, superpower. It's a strength enhancer, really, but I'm able to... Don't give yourself away. Aizawa-sensei cuts him off, looking away as Izuku's mouth snaps shut with an audible click of his teeth. All you get to know about Midoriya's quirk is that it's an emitter type, and it's powerful. The point of this activity is for you students to fight abilities you don't know. A villain will not explain their quirk to you in a fight. I want to see how you adapt against a quirk and fight style you haven't seen before. Izuku shuffles anxiously on his feet. Now, Sensei continues easily, if you do not want a chance to fight Midoriya, your options are individual quirk training, which I will not be available to help you with today. Or I will permit watching the battles if you'd like. Even if you don't want to participate, I think everyone can learn something from watching. Knowing what you do, raise your hand if you're willing to be pitted against Midoriya. Izuku is surprised by how many hands raise. Half the class, Ida, Kachan, Todoroki, Kirishima, and Kaminari are the first ones, hands shooting up. Jiro raises her hand just after them, and Mina, Asui, and Uraraka lift theirs too, a bit more hesitant than the others. Sero's hand goes up as well, but he doesn't look completely certain, while Ojiro looks torn between raising his hand and just watching the battles. Okay. Sensei nods, eyeing the lineup of students and doing a count, probably formulating a lineup of the battles to come. The man glances back at Izuku, studying his face before looking back at the students. Midoriya will choose his first competitor, and after that I will call you out, one by one, for your turn. You're welcome to back out at any time, or choose to participate at any time too. There's a rumble of affirmation from the students, and Izuku nods along as well, already looking down the line of students as he tries to choose who he wants to fight first. He should probably pick someone where he won't display the entire strength of One for All. He knows he'll go hard against Bakugo and Todoroki both, just like he would in his class. They're both capable of keeping up with the powerful quirk he has. Whether they've reached that here yet or not, he doesn't really know. Maybe it'll be the push they need, but still, he shouldn't choose the hardest competitors first, especially not when he's still a wild card to these 1A students. He hasn't done a lot of fighting against Zero, Kirishima, or Kaminari, but he knows the three of them are good. He'll need to keep an eye out for Kaminari because he has been electrocuted before, even if by accident. It's not fun. Zero is quick with his tape, and it's hard to escape if he did manage to snag him. Kirishima's hardening will also be a challenge, though Izuku's sure he could break through it with 100% if it really came down to it. He wouldn't do that in training like this. Then there's the girls. Uraraka's quirk could be troublesome. He'd watched her go head-to-head against Katon during the sports festival and has seen what she can do. But then again, he doesn't know her endurance of her quirk here. Does it still make her sick when she overuses it? And there's not a lot for her to use as an advantage. Depending on when her turn is, there might not be anything around she can use her quirk on. He's fought alongside Asui, and knows she's quick, and her frog tongue is hard to escape. He hasn't really fought against or with Mina or Jiro, but he knows they're fully capable in his reality. Then there's Shinso. He's probably the one Izuku's most interested about, considering he's been in this Class 1A since close to the start of the year, or even since the start of the year. He isn't completely sure when the other was added to the class. There's no doubt that he'll be stronger than what Izuku knows, because he's been learning under Sensei for months at this point, just like Izuku and the rest of the students. Plus, he's got a capture weapon around his neck, and there isn't a doubt in his mind that Aizawa-sensei has something to do with that, and that Shinso definitely isn't what he was during the festival. If Shinso knows Aizawa-sensei's tricks, he's in for a battle that's even harder than their fight during the sports festival. And not to mention, there's also some other form of support here settled snugly over his mouth. Izuku isn't quite sure what it's for, but he's already wary of it. Well, Izuku rolls his shoulder, almost squirming when he realizes they're all waiting for him to make a decision. I've only fought Shinso once before, where I'm from, during the sports festival, but all the gear he has is new to me. Well, obviously not the concept of the capture weapon, even if the Shinso I know didn't use one back then. I'm excited to see how much you've improved. So, can I fight Shinso first? Shinso? Aizawa-sensei glances over for confirmation, which the tired-looking teen offers with a shrug. All right. Midoriya versus Shinso. Everyone waiting their turn or watching take a seat against the wall. Anyone going to individual training, other side of the gym so you're out of the way. We'll start in 2 minutes. Midoriya, Shinso, take the floor. Izuku hesitates for just a second at the teacher's side, before scurrying after Shinso, who shuffles to the center of the gym as directed. It's really nice to meet you, Shinso. Izuku breathes out nervously. I think your quirk is really neat. I'm very glad to get another chance to fight you again, and I hope I'll get the opportunity where I'm from as well. So, you know all about my quirk, then? The other asked flatly, eyebrow cocking. There goes my element of surprise. Sorry, Izuku winces. He doesn't know why he feels so nervous around Shinso. Maybe it's because his Shinso flat out rejected him after their fight. He's still hopeful at some point they'll be friends, and he really hopes Shinso joins their class in his reality too, because he deserves it. If it's any consolation, you got me good during the festival in my reality. I thought it was amazing. I've never seen a quirk like yours. It's so perfect for heroics. You definitely would have won if I didn't snap out of your quirk right when I did. Hang on. You broke out of it? Shinso pauses, suddenly looking unsure, or maybe skeptical. How? Izuku rubs the back of his neck. I don't really know, to be honest. I think I used my quirk. I broke my fingers in the process. I know that much. I don't know if it was the pain or the actual quirk effects, but yeah. It turned into a combat battle after that because I didn't answer any more of your questions. That's morbid. The purple-haired teen scoffs, but his lips quirk upwards faintly. If what you're saying is true, don't underestimate me. I've gotten a lot better at hand-to-hand since the start of the year.
I'll bet, Izuku grins, bouncing on his heels. And you've got a capture weapon, and that support gear now too. I really am excited to see what you can do. I've also gotten a lot better, so let's both try our best.
You're quite the enthusiastic one, aren't you? The purple-haired teen drones. Izuku's not really sure if he's annoyed or pleased. Izuku almost winces at the next words, doused in sarcasm. Lucky me. You two done with the chit-chat? Izuku stiffens at the sudden voice, whipping his head to where Sensei is standing a couple steps away on the other side of a white line now drawn in chalk on the concrete floor. Izuku nods quickly while Shinso just cocks an eyebrow. The man's lips quirk up faintly before he turns to address everyone. The same rules from the sports festival one-on-one battles apply here. I've drawn the boundaries for the battles. Step out of them and you're out. Last one standing in bounds wins. All the same rules apply. Quirk usage welcome at your own discretion. And approved support gear is also allowed. Any questions? Aizawa-sensei glances down the line of students sitting against the wall out of the way, before looking back at Shinso and Izuku. No one has any questions. Satisfied with the understanding, Sensei continues. Okay then. Try to keep all your bones intact, and remember this is for practice. Keep it friendly.
Right,
Izuku chimes in reply, knowing the bones intact comment was directed at him. Shinso offers a nod instead of any words, glancing sideways at Izuku. They've split up to opposite sides of the boundaries, as the man was explaining. Izuku's nerves are finally kicking in. Shinso's body is lax, a forced sort of easiness that would probably put Izuku at ease if it weren't for the fact he knows what Shinso can do. Ready? Sensei stands at the edge of the boundary lines, toward the center. He glances between the two of them casually. Begin.
For a long second, neither of them move. Izuku's more or less waiting for Shinso to make the first move to set the pace, but the teen in question is just lazily scanning Izuku up and down. Finally. So, you're from another world, right? You an alien or something? Izuku pauses in confusion, opening his mouth to reply. The correction of reality, not world, sits on the tip of his tongue, followed by an equal need to bristly defend himself with, "No, I am not an alien." He'll admit he's very close to answering Shinso, but manages to stop himself just in time. That's how he activates his quirk. It's a trap. Izuku had learned from the first time. He clamps his mouth shut and shoots the other boy an unamused look. Hey, Shinso shrugs, hands now lifting to lace through his capture weapon. It was worth a shot anyways. Work smarter, not harder, right? Izuku shakes his head at that, arching into a defensive position. The first strike of Shinso's capture weapon goes for Izuku's feet in an attempt to bind and trip him. He's quick to channel One for All, using it to leap out of the way, just as the material goes to encircle his ankles. He dodges away from a second attack aimed for his thighs, and springs closer to Shinso. Shinso takes a tiny step back, trying to put distance between them. He remembers the other boy being fairly good at hand-to-hand, when he'd been desperate to get Izuku out of bounds, but the capture weapon and his quirk are much more suited for ranged attacks. He's good with the capture weapon, but not as good as Aizawa-sensei. Izuku knows he wouldn't be able to dodge Sensei's fluent flicks of the material like he's dodging Shinso's. Still, Izuku thinks if he didn't have One for All speed enhancement, he probably would have been beat already. Shinso's attacks are quick and leave little time to formulate a plan or even really get out of the way before another is thrown. The capture weapon is used almost like a whip, cracking toward Izuku without hesitation or regard. He's also taking care to keep Izuku out of reach, probably not wanting to be forced into close combat if he doesn't have to be. That's how he will win this. That's the only way he can win this without excessive force. He just needs to get closer. When Shinso's in reach, he'll be able to grab him, force him into combat. He doesn't doubt Shinso has learned some close combat, but Izuku hopes he'll have the advantage there. His quirk is more close combat-oriented than a quirk like Brainwash would be. It's hard getting close to Shinso. In spite of the capture weapon being in the near-constant motion, he's also moving around in the bounds. When Izuku gets close to him, the binding material of the capture weapon targets his limbs. He's actually really impressed. He hopes his Shinso gets to this point too. At one point, Shinso manages to snag Izuku's wrist in his capture weapon, and Izuku panics. He grabs the capture weapon with his other hand, taking a step closer and pulling it taut before he gives a quirk-enhanced tug that has Shinso topping forward. Grip on the capture weapon letting up just enough for Izuku to wiggle his hand free. Izuku jumps back as Shinso catches himself. You're good, Shinso observes, steadying his stance and bringing the weapon back so it coils around his neck. One hand is still laced in the material, so Izuku's ready for it to snap out again. Despite that not being a question, Izuku still doesn't respond. He doesn't want to take any chances. He rushes towards the other teen, and as he does, the capture weapon shoots out for his feet. He launches up into a leap to avoid it again. It's the closest he'd gotten to Shinso, the closest he's come to being able to touch him. He reaches the hand out to grab the other teen. "Midoriya!" Aizawa-sensei's voice has him faltering. "What are you doing?" "What?" Izuku yelps. The urgency in the man's voice has him panicking. Swirling around mid-leap to see the man stood calmly on the sidelines. His mouth is twisted in a grimace, but oh no, it's not moving. He sees the man huff out a breath as he eyes Shinso in exasperation. Shinso had used Sensei's voice. That explains the support gear mask on the other's face. It's a voice alterer. It all feels like it happens in slow motion as he drops to the ground. He feels brainwashing take over just as his feet hit the floor. His body tenses up before automatically giving away to the power of Shinso's quirk. He feels his eyes glaze over, that misty, seeing but unseeing sort of feeling settle in his gaze. He really doesn't like this feeling. "Turn around and walk out of bounds," comes Shinso's own voice. He winces internally as his body reacts instantly, turning slowly on his heels before stepping slowly in the direction of the boundary lines. He feels a sick sense of déjà vu. "Well?" Shinso calls, an almost sort of boastfulness to his tone. "You gonna break free of it again, Midoriya? Or was it a fluke when it happened in your reality? Did it even happen?" It's been a long while since the sports festival, and he's grown a lot. For a couple slow steps, he doesn't even remember how he'd activated one for all that day. His head feels foggy right now, and his steps are slow and unsteady. It's almost hard to breathe under his own internal panic. It's harder to find his quirk than it had been, and that might be because All Might's not here. He remembers looking at the #1 pro. He remembers watching him, and feels defeat before a weird empowerment rippled through him. A silent but there encouragement. He focuses on that feeling, what he remembers of it. He faintly hears the whispers of the vestiges now, and it's a relief that they're here too. At least something from his world is here with him. It takes another long second before he spots the collection of shadowy figures in the corner of the room. They're more distant than they had been during the festival, and All Might is not there with them this time around. They're flickery, like they're not supposed to be here, but still, he feels one for all spark to life in his fingertips. They're gone just as fast as they appeared. He manages to throw a hand back, channeling the quirk into a similar flick of Delaware Smash. He tries to use as little force as he can while still having enough firepower to give himself an advantage. The force of the air jostles him out of Shinso's quirk effects. He manages to catch himself before falling forwards, and even manages to make his opponent stumble back. Izuku's pleased to find his fingers still intact, despite not having his gloves. He's not even as close to the boundary line as he had been at the sports festival either. He knows Shinso won't be distracted long, so he turns on his heel and rushes at the other teen. Shinso is clearly not expecting Izuku to rush him so soon after breaking free of the quirk. He looks startled that Izuku had managed his way out of it. It's almost silly because Izuku had told him he's managed it before. Now's not the time to dwell on it, though. He reaches Shinso before the other can grab a hold of his capture weapon. Izuku manages to intercept the other's wrist as it lifts to entangle in the support gear. He uses just enough of his quirk to toss Shinso towards the boundaries, but not enough to harm him. He still hits the ground with a thump, though. Izuku uses one for all again to follow him just after releasing him, dodging each desperate strike at the capture weapon. Izuku hasn't even managed to push himself to his feet, flicking his binding cloth in an almost frenzy, attempting to catch Izuku from his position on his knees. Izuku launches himself to the air again, and Shinso takes that second to push himself up. Izuku winces internally as the purple-haired teen unknowingly gives him the opening. He's not defending, so Izuku braces his wrist with his opposite hand and aims his hand in Shinso's unaware direction. He flicks his fingers in a more forceful flick attack. Shinso, who'd been in the process of steadying his balance, topples back at the force of it. The fingers on Shinso's hands fall over the chalk line, where he tried to catch himself. "Midoriya wins," Aizawa-sensei calls as Izuku lands gracefully. He heaves a breath, offering the other boy a light smile. After a second of nothing moving, Izuku steps to where Shinso hadn't gotten up, the purple-haired boy looking particularly stunned. "Good work." "That was a good fight," Izuku offers, a hand to help the other up. To his surprise, Shinso takes it after shaking off his own stupor. Izuku forces down the grin, threatening to curl onto his face, as he tugs the other boy up carefully. "That was hard. Your support gear is amazing, and you handle the capture weapon really well, too." Shinso looks stunned, but for a new reason now. He eyes Izuku like he's not sure about him, dropping their linked hands when he realized Izuku's still clutching at his hand in a sportsmanship sort of way. Shinso tucks his hand into his pockets, burying his chin in his capture weapon. Yeah, Shinso huffs. Good fight. They stand awkwardly by each other for a second. Oi, Shinso. Sensei calls, and Izuku actually sees his mouth moving, pressed in a straight, almost annoyed look. What did I say about using my voice? Saw an opportunity, Shinso replies lightly. And I took it. Approved support gear was allowed, right? It was a toss-up between you and Kachan. Midori is clinging to you, and Bakugo's obviously got some sort of connection to him after yesterday. It was the best odds. Plus, who'd ignore you, Sensei? Izuku sees Kachan bristle, where he's sitting beside Kirishima. Hey, call me that again, eyebags, and I'll beat your ass. What? You want to add more time to your house arrest? Kachan? Asshole! Hey, knock it off, you two. Sensei scolds tiredly, shooting Kachan a glare before refocusing his annoyed attention on Shinso. Using my voice on Midori because he's been shadowing me is cruel, Shinso. You need to consider after effects before you target something like that, especially when it comes to civilians and your peers. You don't know what using a personal voice like that will do to someone, as clever as it was. And we talked about you taunting people with strong quirks. That's biased and discriminatory. Using your voice worked, though, Shinso reasons, arms crossing over his chest. He glances cautiously over to where Izuku is digging his thumb in his wrist in a sort of massage. It doesn't feel as nice as when Sensei had done it. Izuku startles to attention when he feels eyes on him, glancing quickly in Shinso's direction. The purple-haired teen cocks his head to the side. Sorry for everything I said, though, Midoriya. I got a bit carried away. That's okay, Izuku dismisses quickly. I understand. You were a lot nicer than the first time we fought anyways. No hard feelings. Aizawa Sensei glances over at Izuku quickly, scanning him with thoughtfully narrowed eyes before he turns the narrowed gaze towards Shinso in warning. Just don't do it again. Last warning you'll be getting for using my voice. Next time you trick your peers with my voice, it'll be a detention. You can't use my authority to your advantage. Message received. Shinso sighs guiltily, reaching up to lace his hands into his capture weapon before turning to where Izuku is watching the exchange. Congrats, by the way. That was a good fight. I thought I had you there. You almost did, Izuku agrees with a weary smile. He rubs at his aching fingers, mind going back to when he'd broken them in such a similar move at the sports festival. He can't tell if it's a phantom pain or if he's aggravated old scars. I have better control now, so I'm lucky in that sense, but I can see how hard it would be to escape your quirk. You're an asset. I can't wait to see what kind of hero you become. Shinso blinks in surprise before his features soften faintly. He reaches up to tug the mask of his voice, altering support gear down, offering a tiny smile. Thanks. Izuku smiles widely. Even if this isn't his Shinso, it still feels like progress. It gives him hope for trying again in his reality. Plus, Shinso seems really cool. He'd love to have him as a friend. The purple-haired teenager finally steps away after glancing at first Aizawa-sensei, who was walking towards them, and then at Izuku himself. He nods his head in a mutual dismissal before going to join his class, settling down on the floor beside a raving, grinning Kaminari. Break anything? Aizawa-sensei's voice startles Izuku back from his thoughts. Oh, no. Izuku laughs awkwardly, offering his hands up for the man to study. The only damage actually there is irritated skin, but Izuku isn't sure if that's from the quirk itself or his own rubbing. I'm fine. Do they hurt? Sensei reiterates casually, continuing when Izuku wrinkles his nose in confusion. You were rubbing at your wrists. And your fingers. And I know you have chronic pain. I can see why. I've never seen an attack like that. The man gestures to Izuku's hands as he tries to settle on a good descriptor. Wind attack. Not from what I assumed was a strength enhancer, at least. Quite the versatile quirk. Oh, no, I'm fine. Izuku waves off, as he subconsciously rubs at his wrists. I'm used to it. I have a high pain tolerance. Really, I'm good to keep going. That was really cool. Shinso's grown so much here, and now I can't wait to see what else has changed. You've taught me loads, and I learned a lot from my work-study teacher as well, and All Might. Besides, with Shigaraki interested in me, I need all the tricks I can get. Sensei is quiet for a second, studying Izuku. Izuku isn't sure how to decipher the look, and doesn't even want to try. There's worry and uncertainty, but a handful of other emotions he's never really seen on Sensei. Is what he said that worrying? All right. He finally relents. He doesn't look pleased at his own decision. But the same rules apply to you as they do to all my students. You can tap out at any time, all right? No questions asked. I know, Izuku assures with a lopsided smile. And I will if I need to. Really, Sensei, this is good practice for me as well. I feel fine. The man's face pinches uncertainly, but he turns to the class nonetheless. Ashido, you're up. Izuku fights Ashido, Kirishima, Asui, and then Kaminari. They all put up good fights, and they're very close to his own Class 1A skill level. He thinks he only wins because he has so much information on them and their quirks from classes together and asking his peers questions. Ashido relies too heavily on her acid. Izuku had never noticed this about Ashido before, but he does now. Her hand-to-hand isn't great, even as she slides around him using her acid. He isn't sure if she's trying to distract him or she's just moving around so he can't land a hit. She's the easiest so far to get out of bounds because, as she's sliding, she's not prepared for a long-distance attack. She slips out of bounds on her own acid when blown off course by his perfectly aimed flick attack. Fighting Kirishima goes about as well as Izuku thought it would. He's harder to move when he's hardened, and attacks just don't land. Plus, if Izuku goes for close combat, Kirishima would probably have the upper hand, considering he's his own shield, and he has full range of motion. Izuku uses a bit more of one for all, launching into the air and inching him out by a powerful kick to the chest. He's still winded when he lets his quirk drop, but Kirishima smiles widely as he rubs at his chest, simply telling Izuku that his attack was manly. Asui manages to catch him with her tongue and toss him towards the boundaries, but before he passes over the line, he uses Delaware Smash to alter his course. He lands in front of her, catching her off guard, and after some quick attacks where he has to dodge her tongue as she's dodging his fists, he manages to get her out. Kaminari is the fastest out. Not by anything Izuku does, just Kaminari's miscalculating his own electricity output within the first 30 seconds. He short-circuits himself, and Izuku doesn't even get hit by it. He feels bad as Sensei calls a forfeit. His fight against Kachan is a little harder. It's harder than his fight against Shinso, but that's because he's so used to fighting his Kachan. This Kachan is smart and powerful, and everything his Kachan is, but he's not on the same level. He's a little overconfident, even after watching how Izuku had been fighting the first couple rounds. Izuku won't say he's sloppy by any means. He's really just not as practiced. It's obvious this Kachan hasn't put in the same work, and the look on Kachan's face whenever Izuku dodges his attacks or retaliates any attack Kachan manages to land on him is telling him. The blonde is quickly realizing that too. He's known Kachan long enough now to know his attack patterns, and he's watched his own Kachan grow past this point. They're simply not on the same level, the two Kachans. Izuku feels a little sick at the thought that he's stronger than Kachan here. Weird. Izuku wonders if that means his theory is right. Was there nothing motivating Kachan to be better? No one pushing him? Well, he's motivated now as Izuku meets one of his aerial attacks halfway and uses a one-for-all enhanced punch directly into Kachan's outstretched palm, which is already alit with crackling explosions. It burns, but Izuku endures it for the sake of following through. It sends Kachan flying backwards through the air, past the boundary line. Izuku winces as he actually hits the wall behind him. Aizawa watches, giving an impressed little nod as he announces Izuku the winner again. "No fucking way," Kachan snarls as he pushes himself up, storming towards Izuku. "You better be fucking serious about being a late bloomer, because if you were hiding this shit as a kid, you're dead. How the hell are you so strong?" "I have to be strong, to keep up with you," Izuku offers in a shrug, half aware of the rest of 1A watching. "I get better, to keep up with you. You get better to keep up with me. We're rivals now. You can do so much more, Kachan, but you just think everyone's beneath you." "Yeah, everyone but you, apparently," the blonde snarls. "Can't believe you threw me into a fucking wall. What the hell sort of quirk even is that?" Izuku chooses to disregard that. "You'll never get better if you believe there's nothing to be better for. There is. You're not the strongest person in the world, and you won't be if you're not trying. I mean, I just took you out in a battle. We're in the exact same class, have learned under the same sensei, with the same classmates, and we've been in similar fights, not to mention you had your quirk for 10 years more than I've had mine." Kachan narrows his eyes, arms crossing over his chest. "The only thing that's changed is I've been working hard to get better, and you've just been floating along thinking you are the best." Izuku crosses his arms over his chest, matching Kachan's stance with narrowed eyes. "You can't be the best if you're not trying, Kachan. You can be so much better. I've seen it." Kachan is nearly vibrating with anger or annoyance, but to Izuku, he doesn't look like he's about to snap. He looks like he's processing, thinking. "Whoa, Baku bro!" Kirishima comes up behind the blonde, hurriedly, clamping a fist onto his arm like he's afraid Katsuki will launch at Izuku. "Don't do anything brash. Calm down." "Fuck off." Kachan shakes his friend off, shoving Kirishima away when he's no longer holding him. "I'm not going to do anything to Izuku. He's right, shitty hair. Can't believe you beat me. You."
Beat me. Fuck. Can't believe you're lecturing me about power. I obviously need to get better if you're throwing me around.
Funny, isn't it? Izuku snickers. He's not afraid of this Kachan. The apology yesterday had been heartfelt, and the emotion real. If he was scared of him at all, Izuku wouldn't have requested Kachan be able to participate and have a chance to fight him. You are a great hero, Kachan. Just not yet.
Fuck you. Bakugo, Sensei calls stiffly. Do you remember you're here because of Midoriya? I will send you back to the dorms if you can't keep yourself in check. Yeah, Kachan growls, turning away from Izuku. Again, I'm not going to do anything to him. I already fucking said he's right, didn't I? I need to get stronger, just so I never lose to you again. You hear me, Izuku? I'll get stronger so you never throw me into a fucking wall again.
Can't wait. Izuku smiles widely. I know you can do it, Kachan. Kachan stalks back to the rest of the class with Kirishima trailing after him. Sensei suddenly looks a lot more tired as he calls the next classmate. He fights Ida and Uraraka next. He wins both times. He's not sure if it's stroking his confidence being able to win against strong opponents so many times in a row, or if he's upset at how far behind this class is. It's eye-opening, really. How is one class of the exact same students with the exact same teacher so far behind another? They've even had similar events taking place, except some of those events ended worse than the ones Izuku went through. That's hard to even imagine, like Ida and his permanent damage from Stain, for example.
There's time for one more battle,
Aizawa-sensei calls as Uraraka shakes Izuku's hand. She's looking a little pale, and he's not sure if she'd managed to curb her sickness that comes with overusing her quirk.
Midoriya will be choosing his last opponent of the day. Those who want to fight and haven't had a chance yet, raise your hand.
Izuku doesn't even need to see who raises their hand. Todoroki-kun, Izuku decides without hesitation. He's waited this long, and, with any luck, maybe Izuku will be able to help this Todoroki like he did back in his own reality. The fight starts off as well as it had when Izuku had fought Todoroki during the sports festival. He attacks with heavy ice attacks, just a bit better contained considering the boundary area isn't as big as it had been during the festival. You can't tell if Todoroki is trying to prove that he doesn't need his father's fire, that Izuku's Todoroki is wrong, or if he's really just trying to win with his ice. Todoroki can be stubborn, but so is Izuku. Izuku's gotten stronger, so he doesn't get hurt as easily. He's a match for Todoroki's ice now. Back then, Todoroki had been stronger with just his ice, and Izuku had struggled to stay in the fight. He'd only had one for all for a few weeks at that point. He'd struggled to keep up, and not let Todoroki win with half his power. It's not like that anymore. He's stronger, and he doesn't break his bones when he shatters chunks of ice shooting towards him. Todoroki is startled as Izuku plows through his ice attacks. He sprints towards Todoroki, dodging and smashing through ice until he lands a hit on the other boy. Well, he lands a hit on particularly strong ice just before he can hit Todoroki. His defense is still amazing. Izuku can see him getting tired. He's getting tired, and frost is crawling across his skin. His breath comes out misty, and Izuku can even see him shiver. He smashes another towering icicle with nothing more than a punch and rushes once again towards Todoroki. He'll take whatever openings he can here. This time, he lands a punch to the other teen. Todoroki reels back, stopped only from crossing over the boundary line by a wall of ice that he shoots up. "You're strong," Todoroki whispers, the words ghosted in with fog. "How are you so good at this?" "I fight, my Todoroki," Izuku calls as he smashes through another chunk of ice. His hands are starting to hurt, the jagged ice making his knuckles bleed, and the few kicks he's done, he's sure, has bruised the top of his foot since he's not wearing the right shoes. "You can be so much stronger, Todoroki-kun. Don't let your father dictate your life. I've seen what you can do." "It's his fire," Todoroki growls as Izuku launches at him with a kick. He shields his face as more ice shoots up. Izuku shatters through it, landing in front of Todoroki. "No, it's not," he argues, letting One for All settle in his arms as he rears back to punch the dual-haired teen. "It's yours, Todoroki. Your ice isn't your mother's, and your fire isn't your father's. They're your quirk." He throws the punch, intending to land it on Todoroki and force him back across the line. Except, he's the one reeling back. His fist aches as fire washes over it. He feels blisters bubbling up as he tugs back. Ouch. He really didn't think this one through all the way, did he? He pulls his hand into his chest, leaping to the side to avoid a stream of flames barreling towards him. It's so hot that he needs to put distance between them. Izuku takes a second to glance at Todoroki. His eyes are determined, palm cupping a flickering flame. Todoroki's red hair is licked with flames. The frost on his skin melted away. "I am not my father." "No, you're not." Izuku agrees as he narrowly misses another shot of fire. Todoroki had just gotten 10 times stronger in no more than a second, but Izuku should have expected that. This was what sent him into surgery after their fight. "You're stronger than him, Todoroki-kun. You'll be better than him." As he's dodging flames, a pillar of ice shoots up at his side. There's nowhere else to go when he's airborne. Using his quirk now, using his flick attack while surrounded by flames will send those flames towards the rest of the class by the force. He hits it, wincing as he slams full force into it. He's sloppier when it comes to smashing this pillar with his non-dominant hand. He doesn't want to make the burns on his right any worse, but he's not as good with his other hand. The fire crawls closer, and Todoroki sends another wave of it barreling towards him. He's intending to win. He probably will win at this point. More ice pops up, and Izuku is almost trapped. The fire licks at his uniform, singeing through the material but not moving any closer. He thinks Todoroki is in full control, despite how new he is to using his fire. He's so cool. There's not enough room to do much with Todoroki, erecting ice formations everywhere as fire targets him. The space to move is getting smaller and smaller. It's pushing him back towards the boundary lines. Izuku's never been prouder of Todoroki. He meets his end in the battle when Todoroki guides an angry, flickering flame straight for him. Izuku jumps out of the way, narrowly missing it, only to be slammed back by ice rushing him. There's no time to destroy it or dodge it. One side of him is a wall of flames, and on the other side, the intimidating white chalk line. The ice catches his foot, freezing up to his knee as it carries him past the boundary line. Izuku distantly hears Aizawa-sensei's voice call aloud, "Todoroki wins!" The ice and fire disappear, the flames melting the ice and ice cooling the fires now that Todoroki isn't avidly keeping both strong. The class erupts into cheers. Izuku doesn't take it to heart. He thinks it's about time he'd lost a match anyways. Izuku shakes his head, smiling widely as Todoroki steps into his field of view, offering a hand up. "Thank you," he says calmly. "I understand you're Todoroki Shota now. You're a good friend, Midoriya." "You did it," Izuku laughs as he grabs Todoroki's outstretched hand with his non-dominant hand. The dual-eyed teen tugs him up easily. "You're already so strong. Don't let your father cap your potential just because Endeavor also had fire. You don't need to be his protege. Be your own hero, Todoroki-kun." "I will." The boy nods stiffly. "I'll surpass my father too, and I'll use his fire to do it. He forced it onto me, but I'll use it to be better than he ever could. My fire, and my ice." "Spiteful," Izuku laughs good-naturedly. "I like it." "Todo, bro!" Kirishima rushes toward them, tackling Todoroki in a headlock. "That was so manly, my man. Your fire is so cool. I didn't know you could do that." "Yeah, Todoroki-kun," Uraraka chimes in, bouncing on her heels. "That was amazing. You were using both so easily. You kept cornering Midoriya. Wow." "First to beat him of our class," Sero cheers. "Congrats, man. He was a tough competitor." A lot of the class is gathered around Todoroki, and he looks almost uncomfortable at the attention. Izuku snickers to himself as he eases away from the group, only to bump into a body before he can really sneak away from the mob. "Oh, Sensei!" Izuku yelps, stumbling back. "Sorry, I didn't see you there." "You got hurt," the man accuses, pointedly looking down to where Izuku is still nursing a burnt hand. The skin is charred and past blisters. Maybe it's a little worse than he'd thought at first. Now that the adrenaline's wearing off, it's starting to ache. Still, it's a small price to pay in order to better the future and help a friend. "It doesn't hurt," Izuku winces as the words leave his mouth. Aizawa-sensei narrows his eyes dangerously on him, and Izuku squirms under the intensity. The teen lets out a nervous laugh, scratching at the back of his head with his uninjured hand. "Okay, it hurts a bit, but it's just another scar. I'll be fine. I mean, I don't even need to bother Recovery Girl. I can just bandage it up and—" "You're going to Recovery Girl," Aizawa-sensei cuts him off, without batting an eyelash. "That's not just a burn, Midoriya. You basically stuck your hand into an inferno. That's a 3rd-degree burn. It'll probably scar even with Recovery Girl's quirk." He was afraid of that. Why did Todoroki choose the exact moment he went for a punch to light up like gasoline fire? He doesn't blame Todoroki at all, but still, terrible timing. "Now we'll be sending you home with more damage." Aizawa-sensei sighs, rubbing at his eyes before dropping his other hand onto Izuku's shoulder. "Sorry we stole your kid. Don't mind the scorch marks. Are bad." To be fair, Izuku leans into the man's touch, snickering despite the pain pulsing across his hand. "I think I was tossed into your laps." The man's lips quirk upwards as he shakes his head fondly. "My point still stands no matter how you got here, problem child. Either way, you'll be going home with more scars than you arrived with." The number of your scars and your terrifyingly high pain tolerance worries me.
I'm okay,
Izuku tells him with a small smile. The man grimaces, gesturing down to Izuku's burn with a jerk of his chin. Try telling me that again when you're not crispy. Izuku lets out a startled laugh. He finds himself wincing halfway through. Sensei glances down in concern. Whoa, Midoriya! Izuku glances up to see 1A looking at him wide-eyed. It's Kaminari who'd asked, wide eyes locked on Izuku's hand. Are you all right?
I'll be fine,
Izuku promises with a light laugh, focusing on Sensei squeezing his shoulder comfortingly instead of the pain in his hand.
I've fought Todoroki-kun before, so I knew this was a possibility. I had some pretty bad burns in the first time around, too, but I wouldn't change what I did at all, either fight.
I didn't mean to hurt you. Todoroki looks distraught, eyes lingering on the injury. I'm sorry, Midoriya.
No, don't be.
Izuku laughs awkwardly, waving a dismissive hand.
I'll be fine. Besides, now I'll have something to remember you all by when I return home. I'll be as good as new when I'm healed up.
Morbid, Shinso whispers from the side, and Izuku finds himself laughing again. He's not sure if it's the pain making him slightly delirious, or if Shinso just caught him off guard. All right. Aizawa-sensei calls attention, already leading Izuku away as he talks over his shoulder. Class dismissed. You're all free to return to the dorms. I'll be taking Midoriya to the infirmary, but I'll have my phone on me if you need me. You can talk to Midoriya later if he's up for it, or tomorrow. Izuku's ushered quickly out of the gym, and 1A is kind enough to shout well wishes at him as they go. It makes him feel warm inside. He's glad they don't hate him anymore, even if they're not his classmates. You know, Aizawa-sensei breaks their comfortable silence as he guides Izuku towards the nurse's office. What you did for Todoroki was admirable. He'll only go up from here, and you're to thank for that. Izuku opens his mouth to brush the praise off, cheeks flushed. But it was stupid, too, Sensei adds without glancing down. Don't throw yourself into the flames for someone else's sake. You're supposed to be a hero, not a self-sacrificial idiot.
Yeah, Izuku pouts. Okay.
I hope you're ready to face recovery, girl, because we're both going to be getting in trouble here. Izuku laughs once again, then laughs harder at Aizawa-sensei's exasperated expression. Definitely delirious. All right, listeners, this concludes Chapter 5 of When Realities Collide. Chapter 6 will be up next. I hope you all are still enjoying this one. Let me know your thoughts and reactions as always. Thank you so much for listening.